Gauntlet was released for the NES in January of 1987. Developed and published by Tengen, the game is a hack-and-slash fantasy game and is among the first multiplayer dungeon crawler games on the NES. The game is an original game based on the 1985 arcade game by the same name. Gauntlet is one of the only 3 licensed games by Tengen on the NES, with the rest of them being unlicensed. Gauntlet's plot has the game's villain, Lorak, stealing a sacred orb that protected the lands of Rindar. This orb, along with other treasure he stole, is taken to the Gauntlet, which is protected by evil creatures. You play as 1 or 2 of the 4 original heroes from the arcade game, and it's your job to get back the sacred orb. Gauntlet's gameplay is you playing the game from a top-down perspective. You're able to aim your character in one of 8 directions, which will determine where your attack will hit. If you're not touching an enemy, you'll throw or shoot your weapon at them, and you're able to cut through enemies if you walk into them, at the cost of your health. The game's greatest mechanic comes from the class system. Depending on which of the 4 heroes you choose, you'll have drastically different stats. This will most noticeably affect your movement speed, however it also affects how much health you have, your attack power, as well as a few other stats. This gives the game, despite having the same levels, a drastically different feel each time you switch up which character you're playing as. A unique element in Gauntlet are how enemies spawn on each level. Rather than being pre-placed or randomly spawned, they spawn from these things called generators, which will constantly pump out monsters until you destroy them. This makes the gameplay a little more frantic, as you not only need to take out the enemies around you, but you also need to take out the generators before you become completely overwhelmed. The game's difficulty ramps up pretty quickly once you hit the 5th stage, and the game continues to ramp up after that point. The game can feel a little tedious across its 100 levels, but it does manage to be fun for short pick-up-and-play action, as long as you're not hitting the game too hard or too often. Graphically, the game doesn't look great, but it is noticeable that it is one of the first to use a top-down perspective, as well as having character sprites that can move in 8 directions, with movement to match each direction. The game's soundtrack does feature its iconic title screen track, but it also has some deeper cuts on the soundtrack. The soundtrack overall is really nice, with the only complaint being that it doesn't have a large number of songs on it. Overall, Gauntlet is a pretty great arcade dungeon crawler with some really early RPG elements. The game's fine to play alone, but it's even better with a friend. The game's classes keep the game fresh, and it would quickly feel stale without the different classes. The only downside is this title's difficulty will most likely have you not see most of it beyond the 2nd castle. The game's definitely worth playing if you're looking for a unique multiplayer dungeon crawler. NES Chronology is a Patreon-supported show, and would not be possible without the support of its patrons. If you'd like to support the show and receive some perks, click the logo and give what you can.